Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a heart shirt, and this one I'm going to kind of do a little bit of ice dye and a little bit of liquid dye. I'm going to place the heart on both the front of the shirt and on the back of the shirt. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center the shirt. And this process is going to go really fast. But I have a link down below this video in the description for another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is getting both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other and both halves of the back of the shirt right up next to each other. That way whenever I apply the dye, both halves of the front of the shirt are going to look more like each other, and the same thing with the back of the shirt. I haven't made a heart shirt for a while, and I've actually misplaced my stencil that I use when I make them. So I'm making a new one, and to do that I've taken a piece of regular white paper, folded it in half, and I've drawn on half of a heart. Then I'm going to use a pair of scissors and cut that out. And then if I like the shape of that heart, I'm going to do the same process on a piece of plastic cutting board. Then I can use that heart stencil whenever I'm making heart shirts and pretty much have most of them look fairly similar. Now that I've made a new stencil, I'm going to place the stencil right on the edge of the shirt. Right now you're seeing the back of the shirt. When I folded it with the back of the shirt up. That wasn't really intentional, that's just kind of the way it happened. To draw the design on the front of the shirt, I would just flip the shirt over. Okay, so now it's time to start fan folding this line that I just drew. And I like to start folding at the part of the heart that kind of dips down in the middle. I think it's easier to make that curve before I'm trying to hold a lot of fabric in my hands. It makes it easier to go around the curves when your folds are a little bit smaller. Once I have this entire line fan folded, or accordion folded, whichever one you want to call it, I'm going to hold these folds in place with some sinew. I'm choosing to use sinew for this design because I want to set this heart apart from the rest of the design. So I don't want the heart to bleed outside of this specific area. And when I wrap the sinew around this line that I've just fan folded, and pull it really tightly, it's going to form kind of a waterproof barrier where the dye is not going to get under that line, and I'm going to have a white definition line. So when I wrap the sinew around this line, I'm going to wrap it around a couple of times, and then I'm going to slowly start to pull the sinew. And as I'm slowly pulling the sinew, I'm using my other hand to kind of gently push down on that line to make sure it doesn't buckle. Once the sinew starts to tighten down on itself, I'm going to make a few more wraps and then again push down on that line and tighten it down really well. From here I'm going to leave the sinew attached and I'm going to straighten my folds and I'm going to tie some sinew lines in the rest of the shirt. The first sinew line that I'm going to tie is going to be pretty close to that heart line. I like to add an additional sinew line just right outside of the heart design to add a little extra oomph to that heart, just kind of set it apart a little extra. Then the rest of the sinew lines that I'm going to tie in the shirt are not going to be really tight. They're going to be there to hold the folds in place, but I don't want the white definition lines. So I'm going to pretty loosely tie those lines in the shirt. At this point, if you wanted to, you could actually just cut off the sinew and either use kite string or you could use rubber bands for this part of the design. When I get down to where the long sleeves are, instead of making just a really small fold down there, I'm going to fan fold that area and then I'm going to fold it up into the rest of the shirt. It's a lot easier to put the dye and to put the ice on top of the shirt when it's a little bit thicker or a little bit wider fold, I guess is probably a better word. It's difficult if those very thin sleeves are hanging down below the design. You can go ahead and dye it that way though, if you'd prefer to. After tying the shirt, I placed it aside for a few days and it's completely dry. This design doesn't need to be though. You can go ahead and apply the dye while it's still partially damp. So this is actually a special order and the customer wanted a bunch of purples. So for the heart portion of this shirt, I'm going to go ahead and use a liquid dye. I'm going to use Hydrangea from Dharma Trading Company. And the reason why I want to use a liquid dye is Hydrangea is a more mild color. It's lighter and sometimes I don't get quite the pop from Hydrangea when I ice dye with it as I do when I liquid dye. So I want the heart to be really pretty, but I want it to be this lighter color. So I've mixed up liquid dye and I'm going to use it for this portion of the shirt. I'm going to ice dye the rest of the shirt, so I've placed it down inside of a piece of vinyl guttering. And then so that the hydrangea doesn't get all over everything, I've put a paper towel down in this end just until I'm finished applying the liquid dye to the heart portion. I'm going to apply the liquid dye to both the front side of the heart and to the back side of the heart. And I forgot to mention, since I drew the heart on the back of the shirt, when I placed the shirt down inside of the vinyl guttering, I went ahead and placed the front of the shirt facing up. It's not really going to matter because I'm going to apply dye to both sides of the shirt. Okay, so now that the heart portion is very well saturated, I took out the paper towel because I don't want any of that transfer dye that got on the paper towel to get anywhere else on the shirt. And now I'm going to start to apply the rest of the dye. And I'm going to apply the dye while the shirt is laying flat on my table. I've chosen a variety of purples and I'm going to apply them in this order, but I'm going to have to repeat most of these colors. I'm using Imperial Purple from Dharma, and I'm going to start by applying Imperial Purple just to that very small section right outside of the heart. Imperial Purple is a darker color, and I think that darker purple is really going to set that lighter heart apart from the rest of the shirt. Then after I apply the Imperial Purple, I'm going to go ahead and lightly spray the rest of the shirt with a soda ash solution. I think that'll help the dye to stick a little bit better. The rest of the colors I'm going to apply to the lines that I have tied in the shirt. And the rest of the colors are Purple Twilight from Dye Spin, then Plum, Deep Purple, and Plum Blossom, which are all Dharma Trading Company colors. Initially, I thought I would try to work using hydrangea into the shirt, but I decided against it, so I didn't go ahead and apply that as an ice dye color. I did add a little bit more of the Plum Blossom though to the shirt because that's a pretty light color and I wanted to make sure it showed up and didn't get overtaken with some of the darker purples. Once I have all the dye on the shirt, I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top, and then I'm going to add on some ice. And when I add the ice on the shirt, a little bit of ice is going to go up on the heart area, but for the most part, I'm not applying ice to that heart section of the shirt. Then I'm also going to incline this shirt. So to do that, I'm going to place one end of the vinyl guttering down inside of a plastic tote. And I'm going to leave the other end of the vinyl guttering hanging over the edge, which is going to place the shirt at an incline. Then I'm going to put the shirt aside and allow the ice to melt. And after the ice melted, the shirt still had quite a bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top. So I went ahead and added a second layer of ice. And then after that second layer of ice melted, I got a little bit concerned that I was going to have maybe not great color saturation on the back side of the shirt. So I decided to go ahead and apply dye to the back side of the shirt. As you can see, I still have some lighter areas, and most of those are where the Plum Blossom is, which is the lightest color that I applied to the shirt. So I went ahead and turned the shirt over inside of the vinyl guttering and applied the same color pattern to the back side of the shirt. As you can see, when I turn the shirt over, I do have quite a bit of dye back there and I do have fairly decent color saturation, but it's not going to harm anything to add a little bit more dye. When I apply the dye to the back side, I'm going to apply a fairly light coat of each of the dye colors. Then I'm going to add a little bit more soda ash and ice to the back of the shirt. This time, because I already have the shirt down inside of the vinyl guttering, I'm going to go ahead and apply the dye while the shirt's at an incline. So after this first layer of ice on the back side melted, I came back and I had just a couple of areas that had quite a bit of undissolved dye. So I added a couple more little chunks of ice to those areas, and then after that melted, I left the shirt to process for about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and started rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. And as you can see, when I flip the shirt over, I have really good color saturation going all throughout the shirt. After rinsing in cold for a while, I went ahead and untied the shirt, warmed the water up to hot, and I continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I've put a lot of dye in this shirt, so instead of just continuing to rinse for a really long time, I'm going to soak the shirt. And to do that, I'm going to place some really hot water in my utility sink, add some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, place the shirt inside, and allow it to soak. When the water cools off, I'll change it out, and I'll continue that soaking process until my water is remaining almost clear. I soaked this shirt for well over 24 hours, changing out the water very often, but I was still getting a little bit of purple left in my water. It wasn't a whole lot, but I went ahead and threw the shirt into my washing machine, washed it using a hot water cycle and some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent. For good measure, I ran the shirt through the hot water cycle in my washing machine a second time and used Professional Textile Detergent then too. So hopefully I got out most, if not all, of the excess dye. I still went ahead and warned the customer that there could be a little bit of dye bleed on this shirt. Okay, so now the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one turned out really pretty. I really love all the purples. And I do like the fact that the heart is set apart. I also like that I added that extra definition line right outside of the heart. I think that draws a little more attention to the heart portion of the shirt too. I also like the combination of light and dark purples. And the plum blossom and plum kind of add a little bit of pop of pinkish, magenta, purpley color in there, which I think is nice as well. I also ended up with a really good color saturation, which makes me happy. There's nothing more aggravating to me than a shirt that I didn't intend to have a bunch of white left on that has a bunch of white. And I'm really happy with this one. So I really love this shirt. I think it turned out really pretty, but what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.